Many were wondering if VP Kamala Harris would basically continue Biden's stance if she wins the presidency. She had some stark words about the conflict yesterday. Let's take a listen together.
And as I just told Prime Minister Netanyahu, it is time to get this deal done. So to everyone who has been calling for a ceasefire, and to everyone who yearns for peace, I see you and I hear you. Let's get the deal done so we can get a ceasefire to end the war. What has happened in Gaza over the past 9 months is devastating. The images of dead children and desperate, hungry people fleeing for safety, sometimes displaced for the second, third, or fourth time. We cannot look away in the face of these tragedies. We cannot allow ourselves to become numb to the suffering, and I will not be silent.
After these words yesterday, Adam, do you think that Prime Minister Netanyahu is concerned about a potential Harris presidency?
I have to say, hearing the language that she used, watching her say those things in the way that she said them, were quite uncomfortable for me personally. It's not a continuation of the Biden policy. It's a continuation of the failed Obama outlook of leading from behind. And it goes all the way back to the language that Obama used in his Cairo speech. This is clearly about putting daylight, more daylight, with a President Harris between Israel and the United States. But also, she did not explain the situation in a way that highlights the fact that it is Hamas that is causing these civilian deaths. It is Hamas. It's Hamas's fault that aid is not getting to Palestinians. I found it to be a very one-sided commentary on the humanitarian crisis in Gaza. And I also found it to be pandering to the far left, which it seems like the party is having to choose between pandering to the far left and trying to win over the Jewish vote that it needs in order to take the presidency. So I feel like the Democrats are in a very peculiar situation because they're not sure what language to use. And you could see this even by Nancy Pelosi's response on Twitter almost immediately after the speech was given. And if you think about the things that Netanyahu really harped on in this speech, it was about unity. It was about the shared collective destinies of both the Israelis and the Jews around the world and the American people, and how Israel prevents American troops from putting their boots on the ground. So I did find her language to be very unsettling. And I also, she mentioned the sexual violence, but then she talked about the children that were killed in Gaza. But if you really think about what we know about October 7th and what was done to children, to not bring that description in, I also think kind of plays to a little bit of a one-sided approach or language, if that makes sense.
Yeah, bottom line, would Netanyahu prefer a President Trump or a President Harris?
I think that Prime Minister Netanyahu gave an amazing speech the other day, finally achieving, I think, what he has seen himself to be for the 21st century, which is the 21st century's Winston Churchill, whereas Churchill was preparing Europe for the Nazis and Netanyahu was preparing the world for the fight with Iran.
It's a very good pivot, but would Netanyahu prefer a President Harris or a President Trump?
So what I was going to say is, I think based on the policies that we have seen over the last, let's say, between President Obama and today, I think it's very clear that an Israeli administration would be able to work much closer and much better with an administration that has more peace proposals and treaties in American history versus an administration that can't get a deal done. So I'm quite certain they would prefer to work with President Trump.
I appreciate you answering that. Thank you. The Prime Minister, of course, meeting with President Biden and VP Harris separately yesterday. Do you think anything substantial was actually achieved in terms of working towards a ceasefire?
The immediate response from the Israeli side was that what was said actually harmed the possibility of this ceasefire. Like I said before in my previous comment, I do find it a little arrogant of Vice President Harris to say it's time to get a deal done when they had 4 peace treaties that were closed prior to their administration taking power. and they were unable to include new countries in the Abraham Accords.
Thank you for watching. Go to newsnationnow.com to find News Nation on your television provider. And don't forget to click the red subscribe button below to get more of News Nation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.